Atomic penetration, rapid fire through your skull. Shot it home when taking it back to the days of trying to lose control. Starving in a blaze of fire, racing through my bones. Oh shit, I'm feeling it. Tachyon! Hell yeah, fuck yeah, I feel like killing it. Tachyon! Alright, that's like what it's like to experience. Tachyon! Out of the blue, into the bag, door coming through like fuck, what was that? Hanging on over, it made me feel so heated. How we creeping out, showing you jack. Shit from alone, give a shit if you don't, cause even if you did, bet you keep coming back. Back for more, need a man, yo, addicted to the heat, we make beats cat. Finish till it bleeds, to death each track, epileptic sees every head we crack. Like EPMD, snapping axes, we tap energy from everything on and off the map. Oh shit, I'm feeling it. Tachyon! Hell yeah, fuck yeah, I feel like killing it. Tachyon! Alright, that's like what it's like to experience. Tachyon!
How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another build video, this one on In and Out Moze, my Iron Bear spam focused Moze build. We're throwing it back to a little bit of a nostalgic setup for Moze here, where prior to a lot of her buffs and various changes to the game, this was kind of the build that she sort of relied on, and was really the only build considered meta for her for quite some time. Now that being said, this is definitely not a build that she has to rely on anymore, as she is a far better character than she once was. But being a better character, I wanted to see how that translated to her Iron Bear / ASE spam build, as in theory that should have only gotten stronger. And yeah, it fucking did. So let's get on into things here. So coming to our trees and starting out with our actual skills, I am mostly just running the Vanquisher Rocket Pod with target softening, as we aren't ever really in Iron Bear very long, and Iron Bear is kind of just used as either an oh shit button or to proc those ASEs, so just using him for debuffing is pretty much the best option here. Now we do run a very generic blue tree here. There's nothing really too crazy going on, however we do have this 1 point into Grizzled. You could also just put this into Explosive Punctuation. They both kind of do about the same thing. But of course, 5 points Stag Den, 5 points Stainless Steel Bear because this does boost Stag Den damage. I do take toward cross promotion. I know a lot of people don't like this, especially when using large splash radius weapons, but if you don't take TCP, you are certifiably a pussy. Now I do only put 1 point Vamp here because of course I am taking one of the points that would usually go into there to put into either Grizzled or Explosive Punctuation for that extra cooldown rate. However, you really don't need more than 1 point in here, plus the class mod that we're using, you can get more points in here through that. But again, very generic blue tree setup for Moze. Coming to our green tree, this is again a very simple tree, but the big standout here is that we come all the way down here for Some for the Road, as again, this is an Iron Bear spam build, so the more you're jumping in and out of Iron Bear, the less ammo consumed. But this is a very important skill for this build, as it is pretty much going to let us use a lot of very high ammo consumption weaponry that usually, even with a full ammo spec, would be very difficult for Moze to upkeep, because we are jumping in and out of Iron Bear pretty much off cooldown. Some for the Road should be active at least 80% of the time, meaning for 80% of the time, you're not going to be consuming ammo, which again lets us use things like the Sandhawk, the Atlas Replay, the Slow Hand, anything that would usually consume a lot of ammo very effectively. Now, despite that, I do still put points into Redistribution, and I do come all the way down to Forge, and this is just because it kind of extends the effectiveness of that 20% of the time that we don't have Some for the Road active. We are using a Blastmaster for this build, so we do not want to be reloading, and there are times when Iron Bear might be coming up a little later than you'd like, and you will be stuck outside of him for a little bit longer. This is when the Big Mag plus ammo regen does come in handy. That being said, you could take points out of this tree so you don't end up having Forge, but we'll get to that in a second. Final thing to mention here, we don't take Click Click purely because this just kind of goes against the idea of this build, because even when Some for the Road isn't active, Click Click would rarely be active even then, and by the time that it is active to its full effectiveness, you're probably going to be wanting to jump into Iron Bear again anyways, and usually by the time you get back out, Click Click probably won't be active again. Now back in the day, this was taken, but that was because the ammo regen worked differently. You used to be able to cap Moze's mag size by firing out bullets and then buying ammo, as if your ammo reserves were full, your mag size wouldn't fill beyond a certain point. But now, with her ammo regen, if her ammo reserves are full but her magazine isn't, it will just regenerate from her reserves. So this still isn't as useful for this build anymore, which is why instead of putting the points into here, I just dump them into Scrappy. Though if you did want more mag size and were planning to use weapons of the same manufacturer, you could go for match set instead. Now onto our red tree, again very generic looking. Armored infantry for some gun damage, drowning and brass for some gun damage, and experimental munitions for just a little bit of extra incendiary damage. Now drowning and brass does have a bit of an inverse synergy with some for the road, as you do end up losing out on fire rate as you stack this, which means if you're stacked with drowning and brass during that 5 seconds of some for the road, you're going to be able to fire less bullets than you otherwise would be able to for free. While this of course isn't ideal and does mean if you don't like the sound of that, you could take the points out of drowning and brass and put them somewhere else, personally I do think it's worth the gun damage. And our final tree, the purple tree, 3 points into big surplus as this is active while Iron Bear is cooling down. Even though Iron Bear isn't cooling down often, this is still very nice for boss killing, but does also still help out a decent bit during mobbing. And then the final 3 points I just dump into biofuel for some health regen. Now as I did mention earlier though, in green tree you can forgo going forge and also opt to take your points entirely out of red tree to instead spec more into purple and go harmonious havoc with superior firepower, using a spec that would look somewhat like this. This means that you could use just cryo weapons along with having more than likely a higher max damage potential. However, I do feel that at this point with the weapons that we are using, you would be relying on some for the road for mobbing way too much, and overall would just be better off running a more traditional superior firepower build. Just with the goal of this build, I do think that forge makes the playstyle flow a little bit more smoothly and makes it so that you can opt to just hold on to Iron Bear for a little bit longer instead of immediately jumping into him off cooldown. But that about does it for our green tree, so let's head on over to our gear, starting out with our weapons. As I mentioned, since we are spamming some for the road, we want to use weapons that can really make use of that, meaning things with high fire rate and high ammo costs are incredible. Things like the Sandhawk, a ×2 slow hand, the Atlas Replay, the Miscreant, the Stoville is a really fun one, the Rebound, which you can use all the way up to a ×3 very effectively, the Torrent, the Redline, Tig's Boom, of course the Hive, especially if you throw on a Guardian Angel with that is incredibly fun, but really just anything that deals splash damage, but really anything that's just high damage, fires fast, and eats through bullets. And ideally deals splash damage as well, but I mean we're Moze, we have short fuse, that's not exactly necessary. Now for our anointments, unfortunately there are a lot of splash weapons that cannot roll splash damage anointments, and for those we're just going to want to use ASE next to mags. I usually either stick to either radiation or cryo, but I mean you can just use whatever you feel like. Now for weapons that do roll splash, I usually run after exiting Iron Bear, gain 160% increased splash damage for 18 seconds, as this is just stronger than the usual 125% from ASE splash damage. And of course we're exiting Iron Bear a hell of a lot. The uptime of this is pretty much constant because I'm not sure I can remember a time on this build that I went 18 seconds without leaving Iron Bear. Now for a shield, I do use a level 1 Revolter with an elemental ASE on it, because not only is this just giving us more damage than a usual Revolter because we're getting that bonus element, I find that it has a better uptime than an Ass Break does. Now I do carry around a normal max level Ass Break on me just for bossing, as not every boss allows you to safely break your shield. I don't use this for mobbing, as a huge amount of the uptime of the Revolter actually gets eaten up by the animation of entering and leaving Iron Bear. Since this starts on action still start, that means when you press the button to activate Iron Bear, the Revolter is activated. This means the entire animation of entering the entire time you're in Iron Bear, and then the entire animation of leaving Iron Bear is consuming your Revolter time. So that's why I prefer to use just the level 1, as it does seem to just have a better uptime. Now you do have a couple other options. You could use an Old God, specifically Incendiary probably being the best, or for some weapons you could opt for an Infernal Wish, which can especially be good for some bossing situations. Now for our grenade, of course ideally you're going to want a Cloning Maddening Tracker. I haven't gotten around to re-rolling the anointment on this one. However, you do want On Grenade Throw, as even though this is an ASE focused build, On Grenade Throw just provides more damage as it is V2 damage. I did test between the two, and consistently, even when matching element, I found that On Grenade Throw was just doing more. Now because we are mainly using a Revolter, you can actually get some really good damage out of grenades and can use more offensively focused grenades, but of course, as we all know, Moze's survivability is often lacking, so just using a CMT to keep her up is most of the time just ideal. And for our relic, we have the classic Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge with the option of Toboggan for some bossing situations. However, even then I do prefer to just use fast fire rate weapons with some for the road to melt a boss than I do just using a generic rocket launcher to nuke them. So most of the time I'm running a Pearl, with of course the best passives being fire rate and mag size. And finally here our class mod, which I do use the Blastmaster, with the ideal passives here being action stole damage, mag mag size, gun damage, specific weapon type damage, the usual culprits of class mod passives, and ideally you do get a point on this into redistribution. Now some of you might be wondering why I'm using a Blastmaster over a Green Monster, as Green Monster gives both splash damage and a global corrosive bonus element. The difference in these though is how they actually proc and how they stack their damage. As I'm standing here right now, my Blastmaster is currently fully charged. I'm getting that max 100% bonus splash damage as I'm just existing and walking around. The only time I stop getting the Blastmaster bonus is when I reload my weapon. The Green Monster is different in that you only stack the bonus as long as you are firing the gun. This means if I'm firing my gun and I fire for that full 5 seconds, oh, Iron Bear's back up, I enter Iron Bear and my bonus is gone. I have to stack it up again with my next sum for the road. The Blastmaster stays through Iron Bear, stays through weapon swaps, stays through literally everything. It only goes away once you hit that reload. So while you could use the Green Monster because it would give you more damage, it's less consistent uptime, and personally I just prefer the Blastmaster for the setup. But yeah, that's gonna about do it for this build, and in conclusion, my personal thoughts on it are that jumping in and out of Iron Bear constantly is still as unfun as I remembered it being, but dear god, it has only gotten stronger with time. I put together this build just kind of out of nostalgia. I'd been thinking about the old days of Moze, and for some reason I had psyoped myself into thinking that it was far more fun than it was. But yes, that does mean that you just watched this video for however long it ends up being for me to say, I probably don't recommend you use this build unless you actually enjoy this type of playstyle. It was definitely fun revisiting an old build for a Vault Hunter though. That used to be the meta, but has since changed. And who knows, maybe I'll check out some old builds for other Vault Hunters in the future. But that isn't about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'll be live right after this video goes up right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch, where there will be a link to down in the description below, and just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.